He stood at my door with tired eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach his face. His shoulders were tense, like a man carrying more than he wanted to admit. "Mom, I'll be back Monday." "Just a weekend," he said too quickly. Behind him stood three small children, quiet in a way children shouldn't be. Their backpacks looked heavier than their little bodies, stuffed with clothes and uncertainty. One held a broken toy truck with a missing wheel, refusing to let it go. Another pressed close to my leg, fingers gripping my dress as if I might disappear too. The youngest didn't move at all, she just stared at me, her eyes asking a question she was too young to say out loud. I wanted to ask him if he was sure. I wanted to ask where he was really going. But mothers learn to hear the lies wrapped in love. He kissed the air near my cheek, mumbled "I'll call," and walked away without turning back. I stood there long after his car disappeared. The screen door still open, the children still silent. Monday came. I cooked extra food. I washed their clothes. I told myself not to worry. Then another week passed. The phone rang less and less, until it stopped ringing altogether. Each night, I checked it one last time before bed, telling myself tomorrow would be different. I told myself he was struggling, that life had knocked him down, that when things got better, he'd come back for his children. But children feel the truth before adults accept it. They stopped asking when their father was coming. They stopped watching the window. They stopped jumping at every sound of a car outside. And when children stop asking, it means they've started learning how to live with hurt. At night, I heard quiet crying through the walls. I prayed harder than I ever had in my life. I asked God for strength I didn't know I'd need at this age. That night, as I tucked them into bed one by one, I understood something that broke my heart and rebuilt it at the same time. I wasn't just helping for the weekend. I wasn't filling in. I had become a mother all over again, not by choice, not by plan, but by love that refused to walk away. And I knew, deep down, that some goodbyes don't announce themselves. They just leave and never come back. Morning came whether I was ready or not. Small shoes lined up by the door. Lunch bags waited on the counter. I learned to move quietly through the house, saving my energy like loose change at the bottom of a purse. My body ached in places I didn't have names for anymore. But there was no room for rest. They needed breakfast. They needed school. They needed someone who wouldn't disappear. Money became a careful conversation with myself. I learned how to stretch one meal into two, then somehow into three. I learned which bills could wait and which ones couldn't. At night, I folded clothes that were slowly getting too small, wondering how time could move so fast and so slow at the same time. School papers came home asking for a parent's signature. I signed my name without hesitation. Doctor visits, teacher meetings, late night fevers, I showed up every single time, even when my niece begged me to sit down. Sometimes the house went quiet after bedtime, and that was the hardest part. I would sit alone in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, holding tears like they were something fragile. I didn't want the children to grow up believing pain was louder than love. Each of them carried the absence differently. One tried to be brave, standing a little taller than necessary. Another grew angry at the smallest things, like anger was easier than missing someone who chose not to come back. The youngest barely spoke his name anymore, as if forgetting was a kind of protection. I never spoke badly about their father. I couldn't bring myself to poison their memories, even though mine were breaking. Instead, I told them stories about strength, about surviving storms, about people who stay when life gets heavy. At night, I prayed for patience. In the mornings, I prayed for endurance. Some days, I prayed just to make it through. They were growing not just taller, but stronger in quiet, unseen ways. And so was I. Even when I didn't feel like it, I realized then that love doesn't always come with joy. Sometimes it comes with sacrifice. Sometimes it comes with exhaustion. But it stays. And while someone else chose to walk away, I chose, every single day, to remain even when staying hurt more than leaving ever could. 12 years passed without asking for permission. The children grew taller. Their voices changed. Their laughter sounded different, older, careful, guarded. And I grew tired in a way sleep could no longer fix. My hands shook sometimes, not from weakness, but from all the years I had carried alone. Life settled into a rhythm. Not an easy one, just familiar. Pain had learned how to live quietly in our house. Then one afternoon, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. Just 3 soft knocks that made my heart stop. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Some instincts never fade, no matter how much time passes. When I pulled the door open, he stood there thinner, older, and worn down by choices he never expected to face. He said my name like he still belonged to it. Behind me, the children stood still. They didn't rush forward. They didn't smile. They didn't cry. They just watched, like strangers observing a memory that no longer felt real. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking under the weight of the words. But I had learned something in 12 long years. Sorry doesn't pack lunches. Sorry doesn't sit through parent meetings. Sorry doesn't stay awake during fevers or wipe tears in the dark. Silence filled the space between us. The kind of silence that speaks louder than anger ever could. He tried to explain. Life had been hard. Things had fallen apart. He hadn't known how to come back. I looked at him and saw the boy I once raised, and the man who walked away. The children didn't ask him where he'd been. They didn't ask why he left. They had already asked those questions years ago, and learned how to survive without answers. He asked if he could stay, if he could talk to them, if he could try. I didn't speak for them. Some wounds don't bleed when they're reopened, they just go numb. And standing there, I realized something painful and clear. Time doesn't heal what responsibility abandons, and love doesn't return just because someone finally does. The door was open, but the distance between us had never felt wider. That night, the house felt heavier than usual. No one talked much. The children stayed in their rooms longer than normal, doors half closed, thoughts loud behind quiet walls. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the same table where homework had been done, tears had fallen, and meals had been shared even when there wasn't much to give. He had come back, but nothing felt returned. I realized something then. Coming back doesn't mean catching up. You can't step into a life you abandoned and expect it to pause for you. Later, one of the children came and sat beside me. No anger, no questions, just a quiet presence. That small moment said everything I needed to hear. They had grown strong without him. They had learned love without promises. They had learned safety from someone who stayed. When he finally spoke to them, his words sounded careful, rehearsed, fragile. He asked for time, for forgiveness, for a chance to explain the years he missed. They listened, but listening isn't the same as trusting. Trust is built in mornings and sleepless nights, in showing up even when you're exhausted, in choosing responsibility over escape. That night, I understood that I hadn't just raised children, I had protected hearts. I had stood in the gap where abandonment could have hardened them, and I had filled it with consistency instead. I didn't feel proud. I felt tired, but I felt at peace, because love had lived in this house the whole time. It just didn't wear the face people expected. Some people leave and call it survival. Others stay and call it duty. But staying is love. As the lights went out and the house finally rested, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Not for what returned, but for what never left.